So, okay. I saw this clip on either YouTube or somewhere, and it was called "You Can Parry Nukes Now," and it's some game that's in development, and it's a little character. They're in some kind of low poly, sort of Risk of Rain, sort of that kind of muted color palette, sci-fi looking world, and they're standing out in this field, and there's this big nuclear explosion that's rushing at them from this city. And just as the explosion gets to them, they lift up their sword in like a parry stance. And they parry the explosion. But it's not like they just cancel it out. They like split the cloud in half. And I was like, that looks fucking awesome. What is this game called? It's called V.A Proxy. Or VA Proxy, I'll just call it. Virginia Proxy. And I wishlisted it, and I was just like, oh, that'll be cool when it comes out. And it's not out yet, but there was a demo released for it, so I checked out the demo. So VA Proxy, what it's going for is it's trying to be a It's Dark Souls plus Devil May Cry. That's the idea. And that's going to get a lot of people's ears perking up at those two names together. And I'm a little surprised something like that hasn't really been done yet. The idea is, it's a really stylish action combat system mixed with this sort of, I'm not really sure because it's a limited world at the moment, but kind of like sort of open world progression of a Souls game with areas that kind of like go. I don't know. Not enough of the world is available to really tell. Maybe it's a little more Elden Ring than Dark Souls at this point. So I played it, and I did not like it. I'm very sorry to say, I just wasn't feeling it, and that really sucks, because I really wanted to like this demo. I really wanted to like this game. And it was just such an uphill battle for me to enjoy myself. I'll explain why. So, the demo, at least, I can't speak to the full game, because it's not done yet. The demo feels like of what's playable, it feels like a proof of concept for a combat system and a movement system. And both of those are interesting. So, to begin with, the one that I think I might like more at this point, which is the movement system. It's a cool movement system. It is not controller compatible. It's designed for keyboard and mouse at the moment. Essentially, you can like walk around, but you've got a dodge, which I later learned is like an invincible dodge, much like Dark Souls. It's a quick movement dodge that if you hold, it's the shift key. Now, if you hold down the dodge button, you will go into a slide after your dodge, and while you're sliding, you can jump, and you'll do a high jump. And while you're jumping, you can then hit the dodge button again, and you'll do a double jump, which it's almost like a directional air dodge, basically, in midair. And then after you have jumped, you can then hover with your little drone buddy, because it's also Nier Automata, and you have a little drone buddy. And it took a little bit of getting used to. Things didn't immediately work in the way that I wanted them to, in terms of getting it was mainly that you have to fully let go of certain buttons. So I would like hold down the shift button and then press like the space bar to jump, and it would not accept it. You have to kind of let go of the dodge button for a second before you can press space to do your high jump out of your slide, which made it feel a little bit stiff at first. But once I got used to it, it was fine. You can also chain slide into just another dodge, dodge roll, which can then go into a slide again, and you can move around very quickly if you need to. Which is important because the world is very large. The second thing is the combat system, and I'm not entirely sold on it. I can definitely see what it's going for, but it felt a little too limited for me to really feel like I think maybe the full potential. And that has to do with the fact that you're basically limited to one weapon set, as far as I can tell. I don't know if like in the full game you'll be able to swap them out. So you technically do have two weapons. You've got two different swords, and they both have different attack strings. And you have one of them equipped as the primary and one as the secondary at all times. Maybe in the eventual game you'll be able to get other ones, or I don't know. I'm not sure how it's eventually going to work, because it sort of seemed like it was locking you in. You get this little menu that looks like there's choices that haven't been, that are not in the demo. And it's specifically like the icon for the only weapons you can choose, the swords. It's like two swords in the icon. So it's like, oh, is that just the one thing? Are there going to be other styles of weapons, perhaps, that are also like you have a different primary and secondary thing? Because you can switch which sword is the primary and secondary with the mouse wheel. So I don't know how that's going to work. But for the time being, it didn't super wow me. Essentially, each sword has a combination, like a regular combination of strikes. The one sword just does like 3 little slashies. You can charge it up if you want to do a big slashie. And the other sword does a sort of cool, it'll do like a slash and then into like a whirlwind spin. And the spin will lift an enemy up along with you. And then it'll do like another little combo in the air, and it's all automated. And then slam it down and then do another combo. And then you can... So each one of them have their own little attack strings, and then you can switch... You can go from the primary one, your primary sword, and then you can... How do I describe this? I should have figured out how to explain this better. So it'll be like, okay, I've got my regular slashy sword and the whirlwind sword. I do the regular sword's like 3-hit attack string, and then I hit the secondary attack button, and my whirlwind sword I do a little like forward spinning attack, like a torpedo forward spin. Like that one Cliff move with his big old sword. It actually looks just like it. Yeah, it's actually the same design as Cliff's sword from Guilty Gear. Anyway. And then you can do the opposite if you swap the spinny sword to be your primary, where you do that one's attack string, and then after you hit them into the air, if you do the regular swords thing, if you use that one next in the combo at any point, it'll do like a big kind of judgment cut. You disappear, do a bunch of cuts kind of thing. Those are, from what I could tell, I really tried to experiment with how the swords worked, and it seemed like that was basically the limit of it. And it was like, okay, all right. So I guess I could get into... So those things are fine and they have promise. I guess I could get into the things that I don't like about the game that were disappointing to me. A couple minor things to begin with. Number one, the game desperately needs a lock-on. It really needs a lock-on. It does not have one, and it will throw maybe like 5 enemies at you at a time, and it's really hard to keep track of them. Oftentimes also there were moments where enemies would zip around the environment really fast, which is like, oh wow, cool, epic style, anime points. But like I don't even, they move so fast. This was really bad with like the first boss that's available in the demo. They moved so fast that I literally can't tell what direction they went in, and now I'm just confused and a little bewildered. And it's just really easy to lose track and get lost in combat, especially when there's multiple enemies or there's one that moves really fast like that. The lock-on feels really like it would help a lot. Second, and this is a problem that might just be because it's a demo, there's no options. There's no options to speak of at all. There's not even volume or display options, which, okay, that might hope it might get janky on certain monitors or what have you, which was disappointing, but it's a demo. The more tangible effect of that is that there's no way to change your keybinds. Here's the thing. This game has two different defensive mechanics, the dodge and the parry. The parry is done by hitting right-click. Right-click is also the secondary weapon, which means that if you don't want to do awkward mid-combat scroll wheel switching to change which sword you're actively using, you're gonna be wanting to use the left and right-click, but you might get like the parry, or sometimes you want to parry, but you can't because you're like too close to being in the attack string, and you'll just do the secondary attack. And it's very awkward feeling, and I wish there was a way to rebind it to anything. Those were more minor gripes. There's the combat tutorial is not very good, which is weird because the movement tutorial I feel is fine. It's a little weird. It essentially drops you into a box, and the only way you can get out of the box is by combining a bunch of the movement mechanics together, and it took me a while to figure that out. But once you do, you kind of realize what's going on. The combat tutorial section is like very weird because all it does is it basically puts some training dummies in front of you, just some absolute like enemies that don't do anything. And then you just beat them up for a while, and it's kind of boring, and it barely teaches me anything about the game or how it works. I don't think there's ever a moment where it tells you like how to parry. No, I think it does. There was no like teaching moment about the parry or the actual function of the dodge outside of movement, which feels important because it's invulnerable and, as I later learned, very important to combat. I thought just parry was important to combat. No, the dodge roll is actually like, when I say important, I mean like necessary, as in there are things that are designed specifically to only be dodged and not parried. And the game did not make that clear, and it led to a lot of confusion and frustration and annoyance in my experience. So, the biggest problem with the game so far is that the world is like, it's really interesting looking. It has a great style. It very much reminds me of Risk of Rain. Risk of Rain 2, specifically, I mean. You'll see some landmark off in the distance. You're like, that looks cool. What's that? You'll go, sprint over there over the course of a minute or two, and then you get there, and it's nothing. The world is giant and cool looking, and it's full of just nothing. Like, an extremely... the world is hollow and very shallow, and there's little to no way to actually interact with it, or for it to interact with you. The most you'll get is, there's an enemy there. The game does have an inventory system, and you can get items, I guess. But did I get any during my time playing? No, I don't think I did. But I was able to pull up the inventory screen, and I did have things that the game starts you with. But like, I would go somewhere, I should mention this game has basically the bonfire system. Think of it, it's literally bonfires from Dark Souls, right? Your save points, your heal spots. And so I'd go somewhere. I'd be like, oh, what's that? I wonder what's over there. I get over there. There's an enemy. I beat it. Nothing. Well, that's done. Did that open something up? Did that lead me in a direction with something else interesting? Sort of, sometimes. What was that other interesting thing that's beyond that enemy that was kind of the game might be directing me towards? Another enemy to fight. Okay. And what's beyond that? Nothing, really. Something vaguely interesting looking sci-fi stuff. Okay. Alright. I guess I'll go a different direction. Oh, there's a castle over there. Let me run over there. And it's a cool moment, because there's something on the top of the castle, on the top of this tower, that's shooting at you. They're shooting these big lasers at you, and you can see these laser ball orbs, projectiles. And they're basically sniping at you from all the way up on this tower, and you can see how to get up to it. And you're running across this field as enemies pop up around you. I'm ignoring them because it's just too stressful to fight them. I get up there. There's this big enemy with like a sword and everything. And I get up to the tower and I fight it and then I beat it and nothing happens. And absolutely nothing happens. The game has a severe lack of both. So first of all, it has basically zero, from what I played that was available in the demo that I could figure, basically no extrinsic motivation to do anything, besides this is the main objective. I beelined the main objective, and then I finished the demo, and I was like, was that it? And then I went back in, and no, there's a bunch of other shit in the world. It's just side content. I say content very loosely, because it really has no meaning or purpose. It's just an enemy is over there. You can go fight it if you want to in the kind of neat combat system. Which means that for me, all of the it lacks extrinsic motivations in the sense that you don't really get anything for doing the only thing that I seem to be able to do in this game, which is run around and fight things. And any intrinsic motivation I have to do those things is very much dulled because the world is so hollow. And there's just nothing really interesting to do in it. And the combat system wasn't deep enough, or at least wasn't challenged enough. It didn't challenge me enough to really make me feel like I wanted to get better at it. The fights could be I might die 2 or 3 times to some of the harder, like that big guy with the sword who shoots the orbs. But then you just kind of learn to run around and use your drone to fire at it, and then you sort of wait it out and just kind of be if you're a little patient and you make liberal use of the dodge button and occasionally parry to regain your health, because that's what parrying does. It regains your health as well. I don't know. It got kind of boring fast for me. Yeah. So what else is there to do? Well, the main storyline, which there's a couple, very short. It took me. Maybe an hour and a half, less than an hour and a half, to finish, to beat the 2 bosses that are available. Both bosses are back to back, by the way. A lot of that was spent being a little confused as to where exactly I was supposed to go. I just kind of ran around until I found a structure that, again, a landmark, like the one landmark that had anything in it. It kind of reminded me of the machine villages from Nier Automata, and then the guy is like, go to that big robot that's between those two towers and turn it on so that you can disable the force field that's keeping you in here. And I was like, okay, a goal, an actual goal. So I go do that, and then this guy who's like me shows up and like shoots the giant robot down with a big fuck off laser or something. And then I go over and fight him. And this fight drove me up the fucking wall. So let me explain to you my experience with the fight of the first boss in V.A Proxy. So it's kind of like it's like Nero, you know, or not Nero, Virgil, like, and whatever, like, rival type character. That's what it seems like. This is like also he literally has the Virgil's judgment cut move. So this entire game up to this point, I basically had to figure out how the combat works myself. And when you're fighting regular enemies, it does feel pretty good, because like they do an attack, they have a little circle that kind of like radiates out from their attack, and that tells you that you can parry it, and then you can parry, or that tells you like the timing to parry it, and then you parry the move, and they get flung back and stunned, and if you were damaged, it restores a hit, and then you can only take 3 fucking hits in this game. You die way too fast, which is another problem. And there's almost no feedback when you get hit. And then you go in, you stun them, and then it usually does damage to, like, parrying does damage to enemies. So it kind of felt like my natural way of learning the game's combat. It felt like I was figuring out, parrying's a really important part of the game, and it's gonna be very central to me getting opportunities to attack. Because, you know, there's an enemy who will do like a tornado spin move with its arms, a robot. His arms spin around really fast, and you can't touch him. But you can parry him, and then he's stunned, and now you can hit him. And that's what it feels. There's these flying guys, and you can kind of shoot them with your drone, but it's really slow to kill them. But they'll fly in, and if you parry them, it'll like instantly kill them because of the reflection damage. And to its credit, it feels good. There's a nice hit stop when it happens. There's a pop. There's a big sound effect, a big effect. It feels good, and that's kind of how I felt like I was being taught to use the combat system. Then I get up to this first boss, this Virgil, and I feel like I'm losing my mind because nothing that I'm trying is working against him. He's incredibly fast. His attacks have basically zero. They have no tells on them at all. They'll have practically unreactable tells, if they even exist, for some of his moves. He's a bunch of different attacks. He can kill you. He literally just has like a 3-hit string that will kill you from full health, because you can only take 3 hits. And so I'm trying to parry his shit, and I think he has 1 parryable attack. That's what I had to look. I was like, am I losing my goddamn mind? I was on this boss for like 20 minutes because I felt like I was trying to do the game's combat, and it just threw out the rules that I had learned up to that point. So I'm trying to fight this guy. I keep dying. Eventually, I figure out the only strategy that could work for me, which this was after I was already very annoyed, which was to run around in a circle. So he goes into this point after one of his attacks where he'll always like try to chase you down to do like a 3-hit combo. He will never deviate from that pattern. So from that behavior. So he will just run after you trying to get in range to do this move forever. And I ran in a circle for 2 minutes shooting him with my drone. I literally just ran in a circle with him following me, and I shot him with my drone for 2 minutes straight until his health was whittled down, and I won the fight. And I was like, wow, amazing gameplay. Because I was kind of not having a good time at that point. And then there's a second boss fight, which I think is way better. It's way better. I kind of wish dodging is necessary because there's completely unblockable attacks in it. But those completely unblockable attacks kind of seem like they would be completely unblockable. Because it's like a gigantic attack that you would literally have no way to avoid. And seemingly can't be parried. Well, as soon as I found out that there were things that can't be parried, I was like, okay, I guess that's a thing now. Yeah, it was fine. It was a shame, and then the game was over. It was a shame because, excuse me, I went on Twitter, and because that's the only place that I could get information about the game. I couldn't find anything on Reddit. I couldn't find any videos yet, because it's just a demo for a relatively niche indie game. And I went on Twitter, which is the only place that I could find anyone sharing any information about it, which is how I found out that guy's attacks are unparryable. And everyone seemed to be having a great time with the game and talking it up like it was the fucking most amazing thing they'd ever played. And I was having a very negative experience with it, and I was very annoyed and frustrated, and I felt like it didn't teach me properly how it wanted to be played, and it felt really shallow, which was the disappointing part. It wasn't just like, oh, the tutorials aren't very good, or the first boss is designed in this kind of baffling way, because parrying, or I guess parrying isn't actually that important. I don't know. Parrying feels important. It feels like an important part of the combat system, but I guess it's not. And it's more dodging. The biggest problem above all that was just that it just wasn't very interesting. I was really, really trying to have a good time. I was trying. And like I said, it reminded me a lot of my experience with BattleBit Remastered, which is, if I have to try this hard to enjoy a game, it's probably not for me, which is the nicest way to put it. Maybe the full game will be better, and it will be more complete and have actual things to do in it that aren't just like the bare bones mechanics of the game. But as it stands, I kind of felt it feels like a lot of flash with very little substance. And you can go, it's a free demo. You can go try it out for yourself right now, and maybe you will completely disagree with me, and that stuff will carry the experience for you as much or all the way to the end. But for me, it really did not work. It never coalesced into anything that was very enjoyable or interesting. And that was really disappointing because I really wanted to like this game. But that was V.A Proxy. You can check it out now on Steam if you're curious.